They thought your story had already ended in silence. They assumed the quiet around you meant surrender, that the delays in your life meant defeat, that the closed doors were proof you were not meant to go further. They misread everything about your process. What they called your ending was actually your becoming. What they labeled as your delay was actually divine preparation unfolding in ways they could never interpret, because what they could not see was that in the hidden places, where no applause reached and no human recognition validated you, something deeper was forming. Strength that cannot be manufactured was being built inside you. Patience that cannot be faked was being carved into your spirit. A foundation so deep that when life began to shake others, you would remain standing without even realizing why. You were never abandoned in those seasons. You were being shaped, and the shaping was not gentle because the calling on your life was not ordinary. Ordinary destinies are formed in comfort, but extraordinary ones are formed in pressure. You were placed in rooms where you felt overlooked so you could learn that visibility is not the same as value. You were left out of things you thought you deserved so you could discover that what is meant for you does not require forcing. There is a strange pattern that runs through every life that carries purpose. At first it always looks like delay. Doors close, people misunderstand, opportunities shift away at the last moment. It feels like everything is working against you, but what you don't realize in those moments is that alignment is happening in the unseen. You are being redirected away from what cannot sustain your future. The truth is, not every rejection is rejection. Some are protection. Some are guidance wrapped in discomfort. Some are mercy disguised as loss. And if you look back carefully, you will see that the things you cried over not getting were often the very things that would have collapsed under the weight of your destiny. Still, in those moments it did not feel that way. It felt like silence from heaven. It felt like prayers were bouncing off ceilings. It felt like you were walking alone while everyone else seemed to be moving forward. But silence was never absence. Silence was construction. Heaven was not ignoring you, it was building through you. Every tear you cried was recorded in a language deeper than words. Every night you stayed awake questioning your worth was a night where resilience was being formed inside your spirit. Every time you chose not to give up even when quitting felt easier, something eternal was being anchored in you. The world measures people by what they show, by achievements, by applause, by recognition, by visible success. But the unseen realm does not operate that way. It measures endurance. It measures integrity when no one is watching. It measures faith when nothing is changing. It measures the heart when everything around it is shaking. And in that measurement you were never failing. Even when you thought you were falling behind, you were actually being prepared ahead of time for what required a stronger version of you. There were moments you questioned everything. Moments where doubt whispered that maybe you were forgotten. Maybe you misunderstood your own path. Maybe you were not as chosen as you once believed. Those whispers felt heavy because they arrived in silence. Not in obvious attacks, but in subtle thoughts that tried to reshape your identity. But identity that is rooted in purpose does not dissolve under pressure. It may bend for a moment, it may feel weak under weight, but it does not break. Because what is written over your life does not expire just because circumstances delay its appearance. You were not delayed in life. You were being developed for timing that you cannot control. There is a difference between movement and alignment. Many move quickly but arrive unprepared. Others move slowly but arrive unstoppable. You were being prepared for the second kind. The fire you went through was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to refine what was inside you. Fire does not ask permission before it reveals what is real. It burns away what cannot last, and leaves only what is strong enough to endure. And you endured. That alone is evidence that something greater has been carrying you, even in moments you did not feel supported, because there is no logical explanation for how you kept standing through what should have broken you. No human calculation explains how you kept believing when everything around you gave you reasons not to. That is not luck. That is not coincidence. That is something deeper working through your life, shaping you into someone who cannot be easily shaken anymore. People who once overlooked you are beginning to sense the shift. Not because you loudly announced anything, but because something about you is different now. Your silence carries weight. Your presence carries clarity. Your energy no longer seeks validation in the same places it once did. And that shift makes people uncomfortable, especially those who assumed you would always remain in the same position they placed you in mentally. They are not reacting to who you were. They are reacting to who you have become. Because transformation does not always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it arrives quietly, but its impact is undeniable. There is something powerful about a person who has walked through disappointment and still chooses to remain kind. Something unexplainable about someone who has been misunderstood but did not allow bitterness to define them. Something rare about a heart that has been tested but did not lose its softness. That is what makes you different now. Not perfection, not superiority, but endurance mixed with grace. You did not become hardened by what you went through. You became clearer, and clarity changes everything. Now you see what you could not see before. You understand what needed to end. You recognize what was never aligned with you. You no longer chase what drains you. You no longer beg for spaces that were never meant to hold your future. This is what growth looks like. Not louder ambition, but quieter discernment. What once confused you now makes sense. What once hurt you now reveals purpose. What once felt like delay now looks like direction. And in that realization, something inside you settles. You begin to understand that not every battle is meant to be fought in the same way. Some battles are won by stepping away. Some victories are found in patience. Some breakthroughs come not through force, but through surrender. Surrender is not weakness. It is trust in a process greater than your immediate understanding. And you are beginning to trust differently now. Not because everything is clear, but because you have already seen enough evidence that even in confusion, something meaningful is still unfolding. There is still more ahead of you than behind you. Even if your past feels heavy, it is no longer your direction. It is only your reference point, not your destination. What is ahead requires a different version of you, a calmer version, a more focused version, a version that does not react out of fear but responds out of wisdom. And that version is already forming. You may not notice it every day, but it is happening in your decisions, in your thoughts, in your patience, in the way you no longer rush what used to trigger anxiety in you. You are becoming someone who does not collapse under pressure anymore. That is what makes your presence unsettling to those who misjudged you. Not because you changed into someone unrecognizable, but because you stopped fitting into their limited expectations. They thought you would stay where they mentally placed you. They thought time would make you smaller, quieter, easier to ignore. But instead time revealed you. And what they are witnessing now is not sudden. It is simply what was always inside you finally becoming visible. There will still be moments of challenge ahead. That is part of any meaningful path. But you will not face them the same way you used to. Something in you now knows how to stand even when answers are delayed. You will learn to move without needing constant validation. You will learn to trust timing even when it stretches your patience. You will learn to remain steady even when circumstances shift unexpectedly. And in all of that, your strength will not come from proving anything to anyone. It will come from understanding that your life is not random. It has direction even when it feels uncertain. You are not walking blindly. You are walking through a process that is shaping you into someone whose story will carry weight beyond your own experience. And when you look back one day, you will see that nothing was wasted. Not the silence, not the rejection, not the confusion, not the waiting. All of it was part of construction. You were being built, not broken. And now, as you continue forward, there is a quiet confidence growing inside you. Not loud pride, but steady assurance. The kind that does not need to announce itself, because it is already evident in how you carry yourself. They underestimated you, but what they did not understand is that being underestimated does not stop destiny. It often fuels it. And now, the same people who once overlooked you are beginning to realize they never truly understood what they were looking at, because you were never ordinary. You were always becoming something they were not prepared to recognize. And now they see it, and that changes everything. What you once called delay was never delay in the way you understood it. Those silent seasons, where nothing seemed to move and no visible progress could be measured, were never empty spaces in your life. They were active seasons of shaping, even though nothing around you made it obvious. It felt like nothing was happening, but in reality everything important was happening within you. While the outside world remained still, something deep inside was being strengthened in ways that could not be rushed or replicated. Those unseen moments were not signs of abandonment. They were not proof that you had been forgotten or overlooked by life or by a higher purpose guiding your path. Instead, they were periods where pressure was forming endurance inside you, where confusion was quietly developing clarity, where disappointment was slowly transforming into emotional strength that cannot be easily shaken by future challenges. There is a kind of growth that only happens in silence, when no one is watching and no one is applauding. It is in those moments that your mindset is reshaped, your patience is tested, and your emotional foundation is rebuilt. You begin to learn lessons that comfort would never have taught you. You learn how to stand when nothing supports you, how to trust when nothing is visible, and how to continue moving forward when certainty is absent. What felt like isolation was actually protection from distractions that could have pulled you away from your direction. What felt like delay was preparation for timing that you were not yet ready to step into. Because if everything had happened when you wanted it to, you would not have been equipped to handle what you were asking for. And now, looking back, you begin to realize that those seasons were not empty at all. They were full of unseen development. They built patience where frustration once lived. They built resilience where doubt once grew. They built strength where uncertainty once controlled your thoughts. Every experience added something to your foundation, even the painful ones that you once wished to escape. So what you thought was failure was actually formation. What you thought was silence was actually construction. And what you thought was being forgotten was actually being prepared for something greater than what you could understand at that time. What you once experienced as rejection was never as final as it felt in the moment. At the time it seemed like doors were closing on you, opportunities were slipping away, and people or situations were pushing you out of spaces you thought you belonged in. Those moments carried pain because they challenged your expectations and made you question your timing, your worth, and your direction. But what felt like being pushed out was actually being guided away. Not every opportunity that looks right in the beginning is meant to sustain you in the long run. Some paths are attractive but not aligned. Some connections feel meaningful but are not built to support your growth. Some doors open quickly but lead to places that would have limited your potential instead of expanding it. So when those doors closed, it was not punishment. It was protection working quietly in the background of your life. Delays, too, were not signs that your progress was being blocked. They were moments where life was adjusting your direction, even when you could not understand the reason. What felt like waiting was often preparation for something more stable, more meaningful, and more aligned with who you are becoming. In those pauses, you were being repositioned away from misalignment and closer to purpose. Misunderstandings also played their role in this process. There were times when people did not see you clearly or situations did not unfold the way you expected. That confusion often created emotional distance from environments that were never meant to hold your growth. Even that distance had meaning, because it prevented you from settling in places that would not have supported your future self. When you look back with more clarity, you begin to see a pattern. The things you once fought to hold on to are no longer part of your life, and what remains has shaped you in ways you did not fully recognize at the time. The path was always being adjusted, even when it felt chaotic. What you called rejection was redirection. What you called delay was alignment in progress. And what you thought was loss was often life quietly steering you towards something more intentional, more fitting, and more in tune with the purpose still unfolding ahead of you. Transformation has a way of reshaping how everything around you is seen, especially how people perceive you. When you are in the middle of growth, it is often invisible to those watching from the outside. You may look the same on the surface, but internally you are no longer the same person. Pressure has a way of refining what comfort never could. It strips away hesitation, builds clarity, and strengthens the parts of you that once doubted themselves. As you move through challenges, something subtle begins to change in the way you carry yourself. You start responding differently to situations that once overwhelmed you. You become quieter in your confidence, more grounded in your decisions, and less dependent on external validation. This shift is not sudden, and it is not always announced with dramatic change. It is gradual, built through experiences that tested your patience, your emotions, and your belief in yourself. People who once underestimated you often do not recognize this transformation immediately. They continue to see you through the lens of who you used to be, not realizing that growth does not always announce itself loudly. But over time, your consistency, your resilience, and your presence begin to tell a different story. They start to notice that you no longer react the same way, no longer shrink in spaces where you once felt small, and no longer seek approval from places that once defined you. What surprises them is not that you changed into someone else, but that you became more of who you always were beneath the doubt and limitation. The strength was always there, but pressure revealed it. The confidence was always within you, but experience refined it. The clarity was always possible, but struggle sharpened it. This is why transformation often shifts perception. It does not create a new identity, it uncovers the real one. And once that truth becomes visible, even those who overlooked you cannot ignore the difference. Your presence begins to speak louder than explanations, and your growth becomes undeniable evidence that you were never stagnant, only evolving in ways they did not notice at the time. Your endurance is not accidental, and it is not something that can be explained by luck or coincidence. The very fact that you are still here, still standing after everything you have been through, already says something powerful about the nature of your journey. There were moments that were meant to break your spirit, moments that should have convinced you to stop, and seasons that tried to convince you that nothing was working in your favor. Yet here you are, still moving, still breathing, still pushing forward even when the weight was heavier than anyone around you could see. That kind of persistence is not ordinary. It reveals that there is something deeper guiding your path, something that continues to hold you together even when circumstances suggest otherwise. People often measure success by visible outcomes, but endurance itself is a form of success that many overlook. The ability to continue when nothing feels certain, to keep believing when results are not immediate, and to still grow even in discomfort is evidence of a purpose that is still active in your life. What you have survived has shaped you in ways that cannot be easily explained. Every setback you faced added layers of strength you did not have before. Every disappointment forced you to look inward and discover resilience you did not know existed. Every closed door redirected your focus towards something more aligned, even when you could not understand it at the time. You did not just go through experiences, you were being formed by them. And because you are still moving forward, it means your story is not complete. There is still more unfolding ahead of you, even if you cannot see the full picture yet. Growth does not stop at survival. It continues into expansion. The same force that carried you through the hardest moments is still guiding you toward new opportunities, new levels of understanding, and new spaces where your presence will matter in ways you have not yet experienced. Your life is not a series of random events. It is a continuous process of becoming, and your endurance is the clearest sign that you are still on a path that leads somewhere meaningful, somewhere greater than where you have already been.